Now, ladies and gentlemen, news of the warm, won't you? And I think you will.
Soft, listen to the warm. We can listen to the warm.
Humanity has pushed the world's climate system to the brink, leaving itself only scant time to act. That's from the head of the UN's group of climate scientists on Monday. But hey, we're ignoring their weapons inspectors. Why don't we ignore this too? We have 5 minutes before midnight, warned Rajendra Pachauri, whose organization will this month release the first volume of a new assessment of global warming and its impacts. Quote, we may utilize the gifts of nature just as we choose, but in our books the debits are always equal to the credits, he said. May I submit that humanity has completely ignored, disregarded, and been totally indifferent to the debits. The IPCC is made up of several hundred climate scientists worldwide, as you may know. A leaked draft 2 weeks ago said human activity is almost certainly the cause of climate change. The draft also forecast that sea levels could rise by 90 centimeters, 3 feet, by the end of the century, and all but dismissed recent claims of a slowdown in the pace of warming, upon which climate change skeptics have seized. We cannot isolate ourselves from anything that happens in any part of this planet. It will affect all of us in some way or the other, Pachauri said. Reining in greenhouse gas emissions is still possible if countries, including in the developing world, rethought their approach to economic growth, he said. Oh, just that, then. That would boost energy security, cut pollution, and improve health, and also offer new job opportunities, he added. Or we could all buy Teslas. A slowing in global warming that climate skeptics say undermines the greenhouse theory is simply a hiatus from higher temperatures, scientists said last month. Grasping one of the thorniest issues in climate politics, the researchers said the recent slowdown lies in a natural but temporary cooling in the tropical Pacific Ocean. The current hiatus is part of natural climate viability, they said. Similar events may occur again, but when assessed on a timescale of decades, the warming trend is very likely to continue with greenhouse gas increase. The question touches on an anomaly in science, the science of climate, according to phys.org. Contrary to earlier predictions, warming of Earth's surface in recent years has not occurred in lockstep with rising levels of heat-trapping gas in the atmosphere. Over the last 50 years, temperatures have risen by an average of 0.21 degrees Fahrenheit per decade, but over the last 15 years, the increase has slowed to a rate of 0.09 degrees per decade, even though fossil fuel carbon emissions continue to break new records. Skeptics have seized on the discrepancy as proof that if warming exists, it is not man-made, but has natural causes, such as fluctuations in solar heat, or not enough people buying Teslas. The new study published in the journal Nature uses a climate model, not observed data, which is generally considered stronger, to say the riddle is explained by ocean circulation. The cooling matches an unusually long but natural trend that is similar to La Niña, they say. Under El Niño, a buildup of exceptionally warm water moves across from the west to the eastern Pacific. Under La Niña, things go into reverse, and the ocean in the eastern Pacific becomes cooler. In both cases, extreme droughts or rainfall can occur. By carefully analyzing a 150-year-old moss bank on the Antarctic Peninsula, researchers reporting in Current Biology, my subscription has lapsed, unfortunately, describe an unprecedented rate of ecological change since the 1960s, driven by warming temperatures. While moss and amoebae may not be the first organisms that come to mind when considering Antarctica, they are dominant components of the year-round terrestrial ecosystem in the small ice-free zones during the summer down there, says one of the researchers from the British Antarctic Survey and the University of Cambridge. We know from meteorological measurements and from the interpretation of signals preserved within ice and sediment cores that the climate of the Antarctic Peninsula has undergone substantial and rapid change, she says, Jessica Royals. Our evidence from the southernmost known moss bank exploits an unusual biological archive and shows that the flora and fauna of the Antarctic Peninsula are very sensitive and have in the past responded and continue to respond to these changes in climate. They look to the Antarctic Peninsula, these researchers, because it is one of the most rapidly warming regions on Earth. Average annual temperatures there have increased by up to half a degree per decade, centigrade, since the 1950s. They were able to characterize the growth and activity of moss and microbes over that time. Growth rates and microbial activity have risen rapidly since the 1960s in a manner that is unprecedented in the last 150 years, consistent with climate change, although recently it may have stalled. Well, who hasn't? And when enough raindrops fall over land instead of the ocean, they begin to add up. New research led by the National Center for Atmospheric Research, NCAR, I'm a big NCAR fan, I go to all the races, shows that when 3 atmospheric patterns came together over the Indian and Pacific Oceans, they drove so much precipitation over Australia in 2010 and 2011 that the world's ocean levels dropped measurably. Unlike other continents, the soils and topography of Australia prevent almost all of its precipitation from running off into the ocean. So let's just get it to rain more over Australia, I say. Don't you? News of the Warm, ladies and gentlemen. It is a copyrighted feature of this broadcast.